And I always tell people when I hire them, I never went to school for this. Every single thing I learned by listening and paying attention. And so, do that. Just listen and pay attention, ask questions.
A quick interruption to remind you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Hey, it's Ari Santiago. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Kathy Saint, president of Schwerdtle. This episode has been a long time in the making. Kathy, I am so happy to finally get you on the podcast.
Me too.
So listen, it's the Made in America podcast. So I'm going to start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
Well, the why I'll answer first, which is because people like to buy products and the products need to be looking nice and decorated nicely. And so we make hot stamping dies that are used to decorate on products, everything from mascara tubes to Mr. Coffee makers to Milwaukee Sawzall cases. And then the other thing that we make are tools that are used in assembly of plastic products. And that would be heat sealing dies that would maybe be used to seal an IV bag, or custom gripper fingers that are used to move little medical devices out of an injection molding machine and through a production line. So everything about decorating and assembling plastic products.
Nice. And why do you guys do it?
That's a long answer, but I'll try and make it quick. Our company
we have a lot of time. So
well, the company is 141 years old. And so back in the early days, Waterbury was the center of the brass capital of the world. And so our company, being in Connecticut and serving that industry, started doing decorating tools because that's where cosmetics started. Their early not Estee Lauder, but I can't remember the names of them, but there was a movie about them recently.
Yeah.
A couple ladies that started, Elizabeth Arden was one of them. And so that really started in Waterbury. In fact, the Mattituck Museum has some parts of the old lipstick museum that was at Risdon. And a lot of those were made by our tools. So back in those days, it was hand engraving originally. And these German engravers that would come over on the boat, my grandfather would meet them, pass them a little bit of money through the fence so that they could then have the money they were required to come through immigration and come in and then set them up and get them trained. That was how we did it back in the day. And it was all three-dimensionally.
That was in the late 1800s?
Early 1900s.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was all three-dimensionally sculpted. And so then later on came...
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions along the way. Three-dimensionally sculpted?
So these lipstick cases were absolutely art. I have some of them. I should have brought them. I have done my website. They're under a picture called Sparklies, but they were literally three-dimensionally sculpted brass. And the way that you made it is you made an arbor that went on the inside of the shell and then a roll on the outside of the shell. So you were doing the same design, raised and sunk, to mate together like gears. And the eyelet companies here, Eyelet Design, Eyelet Toolmaker, Eyelet-Matic, Animatic, Sola Eyelet, all these eyelet companies, many of them still here, would have machines that were called beaders, B-E-A-D, and the arbor would go in, the roll would come along, press against it, spin it around, and form all of that metal with as nearly invisible a line as possible.
So you
as
essentially
it
had two
through.
cylinders with like threads in between in the inside. So when you turn the outside, it would...
The artwork were the gears. So the artwork is basically on the inside of the arbor, raised maybe, and then on the roll that is on the outside, sunk, and then the shell drops onto the arbor. The roll comes in, presses into it, spins around, and presses and forms that artwork all the way around.
Wow.
So when CNC came along, we were early adapters in CNC and had one of the very first in the area laser digitizers that would capture the geometry of our customers' parts and use that to enhance our decorating tool making capability. And then, of course, what was the movie with it's plastics? Get into plastics, young man. Oh, somebody here is going to know it. Nobody old. Anyway, Dustin Hoffman. And so,
The Graduate?
yes. And so our customers, big customers like Bridgeport Metal Goods and Risden and companies like that were making metal shells, started making plastic shells. And they came to us and said, we're molding these plastic parts. We need to get artwork on them. And at that point in time, there was foil that would go on a machine. There'd be a platen that heated up and a steel die would come down and press the foil onto the part. Then what happened is molding technologies were really crappy back then. And so the parts had sinks and bumps and all kinds of things. Yeah. And so they needed something with compliance. And that's when we started bonding silicone to aluminum and creating a silicone formulation that actually has thermally conductive fillers in it so that we tricked it from being an insulator to a conductor.
Sure.
And then we were already mold builders, mold makers, and engravers. So we would be making molds for the silicone. And then the silicone, there's a technology that in the molding process bonds it to the aluminum. And I mean, really bonds it. Like you just cannot rip it off. Yeah.
One item now.
No. And customers always like, they'll say, well, we tried making it. We bought some silicone. We got some glue. And it's like, no.
That's not how this works.
No. And so anyway, we started making the silicone hot stamping dies. And now that's still a big part of our business. Sadly, a lot of the customers that we ship to that used to be here are now in Mexico, but that's better than China because for a while there, actually during the whole recession, so much of the business went over to China.
The 2008.
And before, from 2000 to up to that, we just lost all of the add specialty types of work that were getting decorated. That all went to China and the decorating got done there. And now what we're seeing is reshoring at least to the continent. If it doesn't get all the way back into the United States, it's on the same continent so we can do business. So that's been a good thing.
Is it that because it's a real challenge for you to do business with companies in China?
It's impossible because our average delivery time is like 3 days, 4 days. Yeah.
So trying to get the product there is really a huge problem. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So the reshoring, whether it's to Mexico or the US or whatever, is a big help in terms of your ability to service.
It is. And I'll throw in a quick plug.
Sure.
The Manufacturers CT group has got Harry Moser, who is the head of Reshore now.
Yep.
He's going to be doing a video thing with our group on the 29th at 10 in the morning. It's on the Manufacturers CT site. And he'll be talking about how supply chain members like myself can support the reshoring activity in conjunction with our MEP Constep and with our Department of Economic and Community Development.
Sure. Listen, I love me some collaboration. So we're going to I'm going to making a note. We're going to get to that.
Yeah. Get Harry on here. He's a fascinating person. Yeah.
So let's just take a step back though. So the company's 141 years old.
Yeah.
So tell us the founding story to the degree that you know it.
I actually know it quite well because my cousin, for a project in high school, wrote a whole history of the company. So that was pretty cool and researched it, talked to the people who are still alive and everything. And the company started when brothers came over from Germany and they bought a little rubber stamp company and they had learned engraving, I think maybe up at Niagara Silver, and then bought this little rubber stamp company in Bridgeport and added the steel stamp engraving. And that was like hit with a hammer kind of thing. Yeah.
Old school.
Old school. And I actually have some hand engraved stencils that are steel stamps that they use to make stencils.
Oh, wow.
They're quite remarkable.
That's cool.
And I remember when I was a little girl, one of the engravers made me my own little graver tool so that I could practice. And and when the rubber stamps, we used to make a lot of rubber stamps. And on that side, we had like this melting pot of lead because you do it the same way as you do newspaper. you cast lead type and then slot it in,
And then just pour it over.
And then, well, you rub the ink on top of the lead letters, and then melt them down and make new ones and everything. And the guy that worked there, he would pick the lead type out of the drawers like you were typing, just and have a handful, and I'd be there picking one out, and then we'd love to drop them back in the molten lead pot. Can you imagine OSHA today? Oh my God, 8-year-old kids sitting there dropping the lead back in.
So did Schwerdtle kind of remain small for a while? So it gets started by two brothers. Where do we go from there?
Actually, we got up to like 50 employees, and then with CNC machining and stuff like that, now we have about 20 people, but do, more business than we triple the business that we did with the 50 employees. It's, it's a big change. And, one of the reasons I work in the education side of things is the whole skill sets that are needed are so high. And those early day guys could have killed it at any college they wanted. They were brilliant, but that just wasn't an option. And so they would go an apprenticeship route and earn a darn good living, and have a nice retirement and everything. And then, of course, we lost a lot of the trade schools and things like that. And it became a real struggle, and continues to be a real struggle to find enough skilled workers in Connecticut.
Is that why education is such a passion for you? Because I know that you're really involved, in a number of ways at the technical high school level, at the college level with UConn and Housatonic. Yeah. So, I mean, why do you spend your time on education so much?
Years ago, I was elected president of the Bridgeport Chamber for a couple terms. And when I stepped down, a whole bunch of people called me to say, can you be on our board? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I thought, I really need some guidelines around my volunteer work. And so I set up some rules for myself. And one was that it had to have some benefit to the business. And the second rule was that it couldn't be a hamster on a wheel activity. It had to be something where there was a lever, where there was a turning point, where I was improving a system, and it couldn't involve raising money, because I hate doing that. And so I stuck with those rules. And Chris Lorch, who's my dearest friend and is the owner of Alloy Engineering, is always very involved in education, and I got to know her through the metal cluster and started understanding some of the issues that were happening and the reasons why we were having trouble finding our skilled workers, and got involved with that. Then with Jerry Klupper at New Haven Manufacturers Association, which is now Manufacturer CT. I'm getting used to it. And then that got me involved more at the state level with the different types of programs and the ways that they were integrated and the different silos that were operating.
You're trying to break that down and make the system work better.
That's the biggest thing we've got. And we're making some headway with MCT, not MCT, with the CMC, Connecticut. Sorry, I'm acronyming the hell out of this place, but Connecticut Manufacturers Collaborative.
Sure.
I think we've got real interest from the governor and from all aspects of the government.
When you're thinking about trying to break down silos or streamline, like, give me your thought process on what are we trying to do? Like, what are we trying to streamline? What are we trying to break down? Like, at a high enough level that those of us that don't spend all of our time in it like you do, or as much time as you do in it, like high level, what are some of the challenges on the education front, and how are we trying to fix them?
I guess high level and low level. So on the feet on the ground perspective, you have teachers like Dave Tuttle at Platt Tech, who he has the most robust and active technical advisory committee of any school. I serve on his. Actually, Steve Orlowski at Emmett O'Brien has got a good program there. But Dave has cultivated throughout his career a really strong advisory committee, and he's really listened to them. So I've walked in there one year on different meetings, and everybody's focus is, we are desperate for tool makers. And Dave will adjust his program, and he will start delivering kids who are ready for toolmaker apprenticeships. And then the next year it's, we need CNC machinists. And there's ways of adapting these programs to industry's needs. And maybe it's not year by year, but it's certainly, within 2, 3, 4-year periods that we can make those shifts that reflect what's happening in industry. And he responds to that. That's something that needs to be nurtured in all of the technical schools in the state.
So is it a better connection between industry and education, or more responsiveness from education on what industry needs?
You talked about systems earlier,
Yeah.
and I think really what you need to do now, jumping back to the top of it, is to have the incentives at the superintendent and principal level be towards really, really pushing hard for that collaboration and that flexibility, because being flexible in an institution is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier to just keep doing what you were doing, stay under the radar and keep doing what you're doing. And that's, going to keep you out of trouble. And I think Dave's probably gotten, in fact, I know he's gotten into trouble over the years where industry has had to, come in and support him with the principles and express the reasons why we need him to do what he does. And I'm sure that's true for other teachers as well. So I think that from a systems standpoint, we need to really educate the upper echelon of the system on the need for adaptability and flexibility.
We're looking at the top of the management administration thing. We're looking at the wrong KPIs. We're looking at the wrong metrics. We're driving to the wrong things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll say something that's my opinion, and it's not always popular, but we also really need to think about what we're doing for these students, because I know that, for instance, hairdressing and hospitality are in all the tech schools, and there are students going through theirs, and there's probably some students that are coming out of there and getting some nice careers, but there's an awful lot of students there that have been kind of sold a bill of goods. They're going to go into a hair salon, they're going to work washing hair, and for less than minimum wage and tips, and then if they don't really bring in their own clientele, they're not getting a chair. And I don't know if that's really properly explained. And those same kids might be encouraged to go through the program with manufacturing or mechatronics or auto mechanics or plumbing and electrical or whatever, and they're going to come out with a really good job with really good benefits.
Do you think as a community, as a culture, as a state, the people here living in Connecticut have really, over the last some period of time, devalued where manufacturing really is? We're not really giving people the picture of what's really out there, and is that causing some of our challenges?
I think we're coming out of that now, but hell yeah. Bullard Havens was, pardon my French, just a shithole a number of years ago. They didn't have any good equipment. They didn't have any support from the state. They had nothing they needed. And I don't always agree with Governor Malloy, but one of the things that he did when he came in is he went around the state and he was going to be shutting things down and consolidating into comprehensive high schools. And we got him to see the value of the tech schools, but the need for them to be up to date. And now when you go in Bullard Havens, you see beautiful equipment, brand new, really.
It's such an obvious statement, right? How can you have a technology school without current technology?
Absolutely.
It just doesn't it just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah. And
it's like trying to train a race car driver on a horse. You 100%. Just can't do it. Yeah.
And industry was really turning their backs on it. And listen, industry walks with their feet.
Yep.
And so,
but is there a responsibility of industry to speak up sooner?
We were speaking up.
We were.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, we were speaking up. We were shouting into the void.
But now the void is shouting back, or at least listening.
I think we've got, legislators get it now. And just the fact that the governor put Colin in the place of the chief manufacturing officer. How huge is that? We're
Speaks
the only
volumes.
state in the country that has that. And when I have the privilege of being on the meetings with the, Connecticut Manufacturers Collaborative and listening to the conversations that he's having with the legislators and with the decision makers in the state level and with the people who are at the top level of education, it's going to make a big difference because he's a manufacturer, he's an executive, he understands it from top to bottom.
Sure, been in
And so I'm pretty excited and optimistic about where we're headed. I really feel like.
What do you think's driving that?
Oh, people like me. People like Chris Lorch, people like Jamie Scott, people like, all my friends at the Smaller Manufacturers Association that I belong to, Rich DuPont and Cindy Zoldi and, in every one of our associations. I mean, Champion, Kelly Valeris, who's now, that's her full-time job. She gave up her, position as president of her own manufacturing company to focus on education. And she's the one that worked with Electric Boat and started the Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative. The weird and challenging thing in Connecticut is that for a very small state,
You've got a lot of pockets of industry.
Pockets of industry that have history is everything. If you study history, you understand how these different things. I mean, it's obvious why Electric Boat is where they are. They're on the water. But then you think about why are the spring guys all up in the Bristol area?
Yeah.
Clocks. Back in the early days, it was clocks.
Yeah.
Seth Thomas, and you've got the Timex clock tower. And of course, there were tons of gun makers in the state. We have the Remington Arms Shot Tower in Bridgeport, and we used to make we still actually do make some decorating tools for guns, but we used to make the head marking dies for shotgun shells and decorative dies for Smith & Wesson, for Sturm Ruger, for Remington Arms, Winchester, Marlin Firearms. I mean, for all of them, Colts, they were all here. And so things evolved because the areas. So you got Springs in Bristol. You got deep draw guys in the Waterbury area. You've got the aerospace guys, which are a lot of CNC machining and also materials, big materials in aerospace and big materials in Springs too, because a lot of them go into medical devices now. So there's materials like nitinol.
So you're seeing all of this different variation and variety.
Requires different programs. And that's one of the problems.
Is that a challenge?
It's a really big challenge. And one of the challenges that we've had is that, Frank Gallooni created a beautiful, dream center as Nuntuck, and he created that in collaboration with the Aerospace Components Manufacturers Cluster. Then when Governor Malloy replicated around the state, some of the problems that came up are that they plunked sort of cookie cutter around. So we have, like at Housatonic and Bridgeport, we have a 5-axis CNC machining center that's just a friggin' boat anchor. I mean, it's sitting there. Nobody even knows how to use it. It's barely even been, I don't know if it's been turned on. I don't know. And then you get into the bureaucracy because there's no easy way of saying, we don't really need this, but you guys over there, you got an EDM machine, you got like 5 EDM machines. We got this one 5-axis. How about we trade?
Right.
You can't do that. You can't do that.
In fairness though, Kathy,
I understand.
Swapping around a 5-axis CNC machine isn't like lending someone a videotape,
No, but it's still all in Connecticut. It's still all, I mean.
No, I mean, logistically.
Absolutely. Oh, no. No, you need riggers in the whole bit. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Gotta love the riggers.
Yeah, totally.
My happy days are when I see them in my parking. Actually, I'm getting a new machine sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Everybody loves a new machine.
Oh my God, it's the best.
How did you personally get into manufacturing?
Oh,
growing up, you had talked about your exposure to it. Was that something that your family encouraged? Was something you grabbed onto?
No.
Were you like, hell no, but then you got sucked in? Like what? Give us the...
it's the story that almost every single female that you'll meet in manufacturing will tell you, which is hell no. I went to college and was a double major in English and psychology. And psychology turned out to be my real avocation. I worked at the company for a little while, hated it, quit, sold.
When you at what age? Were you,
Like right out of college.
Okay.
Just hated it.
Why did you start? Why did you try?
I was in the office doing stuff, and it was just kind of fun, busy work.
Got
and
it.
then they wanted me to get into sales, and listen, my mom raised me, don't impose on people, and it was like horrible. It was just, I remember going and sitting in a parking lot and being like, I can't do this, you know? And so I didn't like that. So I left and then went into real estate sales. But in my mind, that was different because you do not sell somebody a house. You don't. Right. You find the right house. You listen to them, you know what they want, and you find it. And then they realize it, you know, but you can't sell somebody a house. I mean, that's just crazy. So anyway.
But by the way, just for the record,
right.
The trick for the business sales is exactly the same thing.
It is, exactly.
Find out the people
so
who
I
need what
that.
you. Oh, okay, all right. Sorry, didn't mean to jump ahead.
No, I learned that. But listen, I've spent my life learning everything the hard way. I was the black sheep in the family. My sister was like that perfect, good student and everything. And I was always, out partying and,
doing your own thing.
Scooching by. Yeah. I love to ski and
so what happened with the real estate career?
So I had a baby and I was a stay-at-home mom for a while. And then unfortunately got a divorce, and I'm still great friends with my daughter's dad, but it just changed everything. I needed to keep busy, and we had somebody out on maternity leave at the time in the accounting department, which is my worst area. But I went in to help out, and then we were growing like crazy at the time. This was like 92, 93, and we were hiring a lot of people. And so I ended up actually doing training, teaching English as a second language, helping employees that were immigrants get their GEDs.
Do you speak other languages?
No, but I helped them learn English. They were mostly Vietnamese and Hispanic.
So using the immersion concept.
Sure.
All in English right from the get-go.
Actually using the GED book,
really?
to teach them and help them learn. And then I added a second shift on and did all the hiring. Then I started managing the production, and I really enjoyed that. And I had always been a shop rat, when I was little. And I always tell people when I hire them, I never went to school for this. Every single thing I learned by listening and paying attention. And so, do that. Just listen and pay attention, ask questions. And I got, back in those old days, the guys weren't super thrilled to have, a female on the floor. And it didn't matter that I was the president's daughter. There was like hazing and stuff that went on, and they'd try and trick me. And so, that's another encouragement to really pay attention.
Right.
And I remember I felt like I finally had it when there was one thing where it was a job that was going to be EDM'd, but it was a mold, so it was going back and forth between sunk and raised, trying to figure out where you start to where you want to end up. And it had multiple surfaces, sunk and raised. And I figured it out, and I was so proud of myself.
So was that, how long after you went back into accounting did you get to the point where you're like, yeah, this is for me. I do want to do this.
Well, the accounting I only did for like 3 months and got the hell out of there. And I'm sure my sister was very, very happy that I was out of there. I was in accounting. It was one of those things where I could never make a mistake. I had to do it so perfectly, because if I made a mistake, I was never going to find it.
Yeah.
My brain doesn't work that way.
Right. Well, plus also you don't want to be wrong on your accounting. So.
God, no.
So you left accounting and then
that was when I started doing the hiring and training. And then I ended up moving into.
Is that what kind of got you? Like, at what point did you make the
being
connection?
Being on the floor, seeing the machines and seeing what they did and how things were made, and the material science that's involved was fascinating to me. Really learning about the properties of the different types of steel that we used, and then we were getting into the silicone and learning about the silicone and the bonding technology and the different durometers and formulations that we had. We had a really brilliant guy, retired not too long ago, that I just love dearly, Matt Scheckman, who developed all this for us.
And so getting involved with that, being on the floor, seeing all the stuff, just like, boom,
would never want to be anyplace else.
That's
never want to be anyplace else.
What's it like, Well, actually, I got two questions, but I'll start with this one. What's it like to work at Schwerdtle? What's it like at small Connecticut
It's
manufacturing?
really family.
Yeah.
I mean, really family. Somebody's dog dies, and we know the dog. In fact, we're a little infamous for this, but my brother rescues dogs, and at any given point in time, we could have between 1 and 8 dogs in his area.
In his area?
Yes. And nobody seems to mind.
Right.
In fact, I think you see people come in and pet them and everything, kind of like them. But it's very, very family. And, we all know each other. And I really love the people that I work with. I've got the most amazing crew. And I tell people when I hire them that that's the most important thing, and that you spend your whole life at work. You spend more time at work than any place else. And so if you're going to be pulling into a parking lot and you've got a bad feeling in your tummy that you just, oh God, I don't want to go in. I don't want to face those people. I don't want to, and in the old days, I think, I know for a fact that there were people like that because it was just a different atmosphere in manufacturing way back, in the early days. But now I think that when the people come in, they love it. We're doing videos for the manufacturing month with some of the younger people, and when I talk to them, they're really, really happy. They've got good jobs, they're making good money, they're learning stuff all the time. We're sending them to classes, and they're really proud of what they make.
Yeah.
Very often I'll be walking through and somebody will show me something that they made, and I'll take a little snapshot and text it to them, like, bring that home, show it to your,
Yeah, show people.
And that's another thing. Back in the old days, you would get fired for doing that if you showed other people what you were doing, because it was like all this, secret.
What kind of people? What's the average age of the people that work at Schwerdtle? And when you're looking to hire people, if someone was thinking about getting into manufacturing, what do you look for?
Those are really good questions. I think what I have and what I look for is attitude first. It's somebody who really has a positive outlook on life. They're not looking always around the corner to see, what's there to get me. That they can relax and trust and just enjoy being in the environment, and good work ethic and a good sense of self, attention to detail. It's really important in manufacturing. You don't pay attention to one little thing and you can crash a $200,000 machine in the blink of an eye. And it's happened,
We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
So if a young person was listening to this, or maybe somebody who's not so young but doesn't love what you're doing, maybe they get that pit in the feeling, that pit feeling in their stomach when they go to work. What kind of people do you think, from your experience, what you've seen in all the education work you've done, plus your work at Schwerdtle, what kind of if I'm thinking about getting into manufacturing, what's something where I would be like, if this is me, then I should look at manufacturing as an option for a career?
I think if you're a smart person one of the things that I always look at on resumes is your hobbies. Because if somebody puts down that they like motorcycles, cars, boats, bicycles, anything like that, then, or drones, or, anything that where they're hands-on working on something for fun, that's my guy.
Right.
Eagle Scouts, top of the pile. Always top of the pile. Yeah. I think a lot of times what you're looking for is somebody who certainly could manage college if that was what they wanted to do, or if it was, within their financial capabilities, but really doesn't want to do core curriculum. They don't want to go back through English and history and all of that stuff. They want to jump right into the meat of it. And that was my brother. My brother got a soccer scholarship to go to UConn. He lasted one semester and said, the hell with this, came back and went through the journeyman apprenticeship program at our company for an engraver, which is a 10,000 hour apprenticeship. It's like no joke.
No joke.
Yeah.
You got there.
Yeah.
So, changing gears, I know we're going to go to rapid fire round questions soon,
okay.
But, one things I noticed, like on your website, and you've mentioned it a few different times in our conversation, which is Schwerdtle's embracing of technology.
Yeah,
And
that's important.
through the years, even as far back as 100 years ago and more, you guys were, it sounds like from what you explained and what I've read, that you guys are always embracing the next thing.
Yeah.
Talk about the relevance of that and the importance of that to survive 141 years, if that's even part of the formula. And how do you think about what to invest in now in 2020?
Oh, man. So I'll do this fast. My dad, for starters, because he was the one that actually we had cousins in Rhode Island who were also engravers and went over there because they had 3D engraving equipment, brought it back. Nobody would use it. So my father just started using it. And then finally everybody came along. And then the big turning point for me was meeting a guy named Dr. Fred Betts, who's a brilliant physicist and spent his entire career with the National Science Foundation advising huge global corporations on management of technology, which I didn't even know was a thing. And so I got exposed to that concept, which is if you're in manufacturing, do you have a real business or do you just have a little shop with some tribal knowledge? And I realized at that point in time that while we did have good CNC machining skills and all, we did have a collection of tribal knowledge, and that I really needed to focus on the marketplace, because the market always tells you what you have to do. It's your customers who are always going to tell you what's the next iteration, what's the next place you're going to go. And so I connected with the industry university cooperative research centers that exist all around the company working on discrete areas of research. And then I got connected with UConn, and I'm on their Material Science and Engineering Advisory Board. And now I'm also on the Tech Park Board so that I could get closer to it, because small companies don't have the resources to access cutting edge technology. It takes hundreds of millions of dollars to take something from research to utility. So small companies like mine, we need to find that entry point that's farther down the path where it's affordable for us so that we can stay ahead of things. And then industry consultants, your suppliers are always experts in different materials and technologies. And so they also are a tremendous source of support for staying ahead of the curve in that.
So when you think about investing and when it's time to make the decision, like what's the criteria you use to say, all right, Schwerdtle's going to pull the trigger. We're going to invest in, revamping, getting a new machine, or no, we want to do something with our CRM or our ERP platform, or how do you think about those decisions and making those investment choices? Because you can't do everything, right?
You can't do everything. And especially coming out of the recession was really challenging. And one of the things that really helped us a lot was that DECD program where they had the low interest loans. And we used that program to move to a different facility that was all on one floor. And then we also used it to buy a really critical, it's about $250,000 piece of equipment that was going to give us a real competitive edge, and that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise without that support from the state.
Right.
And so I'm very appreciative of programs like that and the manufacturer's voucher program and others that have helped us through difficult times to acquire technology that really has been a game changer for our company.
Listen, public-private partnerships so important, and working together. I'm big on this collaboration thing we talked about at pre-show. I love to hear that when government's being responsive to businesses engaging with government. We look at sort of the nonprofits and education and bring that all together. Together we can win. So last thing before we get to rapid fire, you mentioned earlier about being a woman in manufacturing, and I've been asking a lot lately about people's thoughts as it relates to diversity and inclusion in manufacturing. And so just from your perspective, not just gender, but that too, what are your thoughts on diversity in manufacturing and how welcoming it is and the value of even thinking or talking about diversity? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm smiling because of so much has changed. I mean, when I started, there were pinup girl calendars all over the factory, and the first girl we hired managed to get along just fine because she was a champion a sharpshooter.
Okay.
And she was a pretty tough chick, and she just didn't take any nonsense from the guys. But there was a lot of grumbling and not a lot of happiness, and I experienced some issues myself, in the factory in the old days. Now I just don't see it as a barrier, and I have a pack of girlfriends that own manufacturing companies that all came into it similar ways as I did, kind of reluctantly, and then wouldn't do anything else. And I think that's becoming a more and more common thing, is that next generation is actually the daughter, not necessarily the son. And I think that because so much manufacturing is automated, and certainly mechatronics, I mean, if you want to pick something that is as gender neutral as there can be, that whole entire field with automation and programming and creating assembly lines and everything else. I mean, anybody can do that. The places where you really need any kind of physical strength are really just getting managed out of the industry.
Yeah, trying to automate through that.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's value in manufacturers proactively trying to get some diversity in their plants?
We have 30% more of our brain associated to communication
Sure.
than the guys, and it's pretty evident when you work with women that there is a lot more of that going on. It's something that they have just in a general sense, more aptitude for. And I think that's a real benefit.
Sure. Listen, different perspectives bring different strengths and different talents.
Communication is everything.
It is absolutely everything.
It really is the first 15%.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that's fantastic. And I'll leave it on that communication, because that is a great way to end it. You ready for some quick questions?
Oh, God.
All right, here we go. They're not that bad. Red Sox or Yankees?
Oh, Yankees.
Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Starbucks.
iPhone or Android?
A Droid, which my kids just hate that I'm not on an iPhone. But
no free tech support for you then, I suppose.
No.
So when you take time off outside of COVID, you a staycation or exotic destination kind of gal?
If Maine is an exotic destination,
I'm going to say that's staycation-y.
That's very staycation-y. Little tiny cabin, no running water, propane.
Just chilling. All right.
Just chilling.
I like it. Sports car or SUV?
Truck.
If you could do anything and had to, other than be the president of Schwerdtle, what would you do?
Oh, man. I want to do a million things, always. That's like I can't even think of it. It's like the fight I have in my own brain all the time with trying to segment all the things I'm trying to do. I think I would really work in school systems in the inner city with children and dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, because I think in the inner cities, practically all those kids have dealt with really traumatic things in their lives, and we are not even close to supplying them with the proper resources to deal with the challenges that they have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yes, well, that's well said. Do you have a favorite business book?
Oh, yeah. The Deming Management Method by Mary Walton is, from my perspective, the one book that every person in business should read.
Well, good. I haven't even heard of that one. I'm glad to know about it.
Yeah.
Kathy, what's something that you learned early in your career or early in your life that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
Well, I don't know how much success I've had to start with. I mean, I'm still working on it, but I think I just have always been a fighter. I mean, when I was a little kid, I actually did get into fights in school, but I was always like defending another kid, like there was a kid that got picked on my bus and I let him sit with me. And then one of the other kids shoved me after we got off the bus and we got into a fight and ended up in the principal's office. But I've always been, really a fighter for underdog, hate bullies, really, like to make things nice. And I think, in business, that's a good quality.
No doubt about it. What's something that you learned later in your career or later in your life that if you went back and told young Kathy and she listened to you, would really set her up for success?
Yeah, that's the key part, is that she would ever listen. But what you said before, that sales is nothing more than really recognizing that you've got something that somebody can really benefit from. And as long as that's there, it makes sense. And if it's not there, you got a new friend.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. Look at that.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of sales. I like that one. One. Kathy, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Too.
Thank you so very much for coming over and having this conversation.
Me too. Thank you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct.
As always, thank you so much for tuning in and spending some time with me today. You know, my goal is to help build a community where we can learn and grow together. Your input, feedback, and engagement is critical to making that happen. Please do comment, like, and subscribe so more and more people can hear what we're doing and join our community of growth and success. Thanks so much for tuning in. Talk to you again soon.